okay, he gets to go home. If I say hard things, I got to come back next week and look at you all again. Or not look at you because I've made you mad and you stayed home. So if you hear me say something that seems like, ouch, you have to know that I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm trying to get you to see something. I remember Beth and I were quite a bit younger. We didn't have any natural children at the time. We lived in Louisville. And there was this little boy that his mom had kind of lost her mind, and his dad had gone off to the military, and God saw fit to give him to, I think he was about 2. Little Jason, he's about 2. He's like 20-something now. It's ridiculous. He might even be 30 by now. Thank God. So he was a cute little fella, and we were learning how to raise a child. And I wasn't at the park, but we were at a park in Louisville. I think it was San Antonio Park. I think it was. And he was hanging from the monkey bars, and Beth would get him down, and she would say, now, Jason, we got too many J's in our family. I'm getting them all mixed up. Jason, no. And he'd do it again, and she'd pull him down and say, Jason, no. And then he got up there again, and she said, okay. So she went down, sat down, got her a soda pop and popcorn. We're going to watch the show. If you're not going to listen to me, I'm going to let you suffer the consequences. He fell. She went and picked him up and brushed him off and said, that's why I said no. Now, some people, gosh, that's mean. But see, Jason never did that again. Because what if next time it was something more dangerous? So he learned when Beth said no, it's for my good. It's to help me and not to harm me, to give me a hope in the future. I've read that someplace. See, I'm driven by what I see. What I see gives me a sense of urgency. What I see is time ticking by and dead bodies piling up on the floor. And a church capable of doing something about it. I wish you could see yourselves like I see you. See, what I see is bigger than me. So what I see has to also consume you. Because if it does not consume you, then I cannot accomplish that which God has called me to do. And what a bummer for me to get past those years where I can operate at full capacity, having missed it, because I had to wait on people. There is nothing I can do about that, folks. I cannot do this without you. Sometimes this burden becomes so heavy it feels impossible to carry. It's why I pray the way I pray. It's why I study the way I study. It's why that I'm on my 3rd time through the Bible this year, including an extra time through the New Testament. It's why I'm here nearly 2 hours a day exclusively just praying and seeking God. I want to be the best possible example for you to follow me as I follow Christ, as Paul told the Corinthians in 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 1. But see, not only do I see these dead bodies on the floor, I see why they're on the floor. Because see, I see a strong man that has occupied this city and ruined and destroyed this city for so long. And God showed me this strong man back in I think it was about 2003. It was about 3 years before I moved to E-Town. God showed me a particular place in this city, and then I went to that particular place and saw it, the place, not the stronghold, and I recognized that my assignment was Hardin County. And my assignment was to build a church that could topple this strong man. That's my assignment. I see a real enemy, folks. Why do you think these dead bodies are on the floor? Do you think these dead bodies are on the floor because they want to be on the floor? No, the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. Remember, I talked about that last week. These people represent people that want to be in God's purpose for them, but the cost is so great, they don't want to do it. They don't want to surrender. They don't want to give in. And there's a strong enemy. See, the Bible says in John 10:10, it says, the thief comes to steal, to kill, and to destroy. But Jesus said, I have come that you may have life and have it more abundantly. The thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy. I came that you may have life and have it more abundantly. See, Jesus wants us to have abundant life. Abundant life. He wants us to walk in our purpose. He wants us to fulfill our destiny. He wants us to see what He sees in us. He wants us to accomplish what He's called us to accomplish. And see, there's a real devil that comes to steal, to kill, and to destroy. I have picked on this a lot, and it's not sports this week. Although I could. I won't. But to the young people and to the children, there's one thing you have to learn to say no to while you're young. It's real simple. You need to say no to work on Sunday. Because, see, by the time you're an adult, it's already too difficult. That's why it says in Ecclesiastes chapter 12, remember your Creator in the days of your youth. Right? It says, because when you're older, the harder times come. It's harder to say no when you got bills due. Right? It's harder to say no when there's this price tag attached to it. So what you do is while you are young, you say no then. No, I can't mow your grass, Mr. Neighbor, on Sunday, because Sunday is the day I dedicate to Jesus. You say no to that little dinky high school job that you get at McDonald's when McDonald's puts you on a schedule on Sunday and so you can put me there all day, but I cannot work on Sunday. Because, see, at that point, you don't have bills riding on it. And any parent that will not support that, I'm being nice this week. This is me being nice. But if you will not support your kids having Sunday off, man, what is up with that? Support it. Get behind that, because, see, they don't have bills at this point. They live with you. So let them have that cushion while they're young, because, see, what happens is then they will prioritize their life around that thinking.
Yes, that's it.
Right?
Yeah.
So then when it comes down to it, they'll say, you know what, I can't buy that because I can't work that extra day. So I'm going to settle for this instead. Because where do people do the settling? Right here. Purpose. Destiny. How many destinies are working right now? They have a purpose. Not only do they have a purpose out there, but they have a purpose right here. Do you know that we have worship team members, ushers, pastors, teachers, evangelists, prophets, apostles, administrators, gifts of helps, but they can't do it because they're working. And I will say this, church, we feed it. We feed it. I said last week that we're undisciplined, so things had to be open 7 days a week, right? We can get everything we need to get done in 6 days. We really can. But we just choose not to because we've see, the world shifts and we shift with it. We've grown accustomed to it. We can go to Walmart on Sunday now. Right? How many destinies are working right now? Because, see, again, remember, the fivefold ministry represents that spigot. If we've got water coming out and we have 10 or 15 people working, that's 10 or 15, it's not quite tight and water spewing out. It's not getting to its destination. Because, see, you may say, well, the pastor needs to be able to preach. But, see, how can I preach if we don't have good ushers? Do you know why you have a good experience here? It's because we have good ushers. You don't think stuff goes on and there are distractions that go on, they keep out there? You wouldn't believe how many times after service I have figured out something happened, but none of us had to deal with it because security and ushers was right on top of it. Cleaning. Important. If you don't believe me, I'll tell the cleaning team not to clean for 3 months. You will suddenly appreciate their ministry. I'm not doing that because I won't live with it, but just understand, you get the point. Nursery, people we don't even see, children's church, people we barely even see. How important are these ministries? And how many of those people that are tied to us, whose destiny is tied to Lakeside, who need the revelation that's coming from the leadership of this church, the divine mission that God has spoken to the leadership of this church? They are starving for that message, but they didn't learn to say no on Sunday. Now, I'm not here hacking on you. If you work on Sundays, I get it. Especially for those of you in the medical field, God bless you. There's no getting out of that, I understand. But there are some of us that we can do something about it. And right now, it's more difficult for you that are adults and you work on some Sundays. I get it. And you're like, well, Pastor, you're saying that everything's so great here that I can't get this online or I can't get this on my own. Well, that's exactly what I'm saying. Because, see, there was a church in Laodicea in the book of Revelation, and they said, we're full. We're clothed. We don't need this. And Jesus said, you're poor, you're wretched, and you're naked. And see, that's how we are when we don't have the covering of a church and we meet on Sunday. That's just when we meet. It's kind of the standard that the apostles set because the apostles wanted to be able to be in the synagogues. There's nothing magical or perfect about Sunday. We can meet any other day of the week, but Sunday is the day that we've chosen, and it is the New Testament pattern. That's why we do it. So we need to make it a priority to say, you know what? I am going to give Sunday my best. And see, the way you give Sunday your best is not starting on Sunday morning to make decisions. It's making decisions when you're 8. It's making decisions when you're 16 and you got this car, and boy, that extra day of work, I could get my rims. That extra day of work, and I could get this. And before you know it, here you are. Because, see, the enemy will do anything he can to deter you. And see, I love that song, I Belong, because it says the enemy can't take what I have, change who I am, because I belong to you. So as long as we are alert to his plots, he has no access to our destiny. But at the moment we compromise, the moment we give in that one time, guess what we give the enemy? Access to our purpose. And I'm going to tell you what, once Satan gets access to our purpose, his intent is to destroy it. The thief comes to steal, to kill, and to destroy. So Jesus said, but I've come to give you life and more abundantly. So the fact is, it's pretty easy to tell who the enemy is and who Jesus is. Is that which is dangling before you, this golden opportunity, is it going to rob you of your purpose or is it going to feed it? And that's where we have to make the decision. And that's where we have to say, no. See, I had this opportunity as an adult. I worked as a parking valet, and as you know, parking valet is a very glitzy job that pays real good. Not. You are a servant of servants that serve servants. It's one of the more base jobs you can get. Now, thank God for it. It started me and launched me into my destiny. And if I'd have been a parking valet the rest of my life, as long as it will let me walk in my purpose, then I'll make that income work. Live in a studio apartment, do what it's got to take. 6 kids or 4 kids and 1 bedroom, we make it work. Because my destiny is worth more than my comfort. Now, I do thank God he didn't choose that path for me. He gave me He advanced me. And I think that's how God works. He advances you when you obey him. But I was in the mentioning for a management position. And I got to asking about it. It was a 25% pay bump. This is pretty significant. It was attractive. Only one problem, it was salary. And if it was salary, guess what that meant? My hours weren't certain. I was already a youth pastor at that point. I had a choice. I can chase the money, or I can pursue my purpose. And I told my boss, I said, I'm just fine being a valet. You go ahead and you give that position to somebody else. And the person that got that job was a turd. I mean, you know how you're in a farm and the outside of the turd is hardened? So you think, I'll just go ahead and step on it, and you realize the inside is not hardened? That guy was the inside part. He was that much of a turd. His name was Arthur, and if you're an Arthur, I'm sorry, I'm not talking about you. But he did nothing but become a thorn in my side. He became a thorn in my side, and I actually called him Satan once. I thought, oh, I'm fired now. My wife was headed to a missions trip, and he knew that we believed in healing. He knew we believed in the power of God. And I was telling him, somebody else, the story of, I wasn't talking to him because he was a jerk. But I was talking to a friend of mine in my office. His name was Joe. And I was telling him about how she was getting her shots and she was getting ready, and we were kind of excited, you know, and I wasn't about to get on the airplane, but she's more than welcome to. And they had switched destinations. She was originally going to Ecuador and ended up going to Venezuela. And I was just telling him about all this, and then Arthur pipes up and says, I thought you were a man of God. I was like, where'd that come from? So I get up and I'm like, well, sir, I am. And he said, how come she needs shots? Don't you believe in healing? She'd go over and get some kind of disease and God could heal her, right? I said he very well could, but the law requires. And he just, you're a fake. You're a phony. And I mean, I was feeling the pressure, and I'm like, what am I going to do? And I said, get thee behind me, Satan. You do not have the thoughts of God, but the thoughts of man. And then I thought, well, at least my buddy Joe's here. And Joe said, I'm out of here. Joe was a big boy. Big boy, like 300 pounds, probably. Big boy. I ain't never seen a big boy move that fast. Ran, and there I stood, me and Art. And I just looked at him and was like, and I walked out and I caught up with Joe because big people are easy to catch. And I looked at him, he looked at me, and he said, you're fired, you know that, right? And I said, yep, I know it. My purpose was more important to me than my job. And I had turned down that position. That was the ironic thing. I could have been the turd. I turned it down. But I see a real enemy that wants us destroyed. Now, don't raise your hands. But some months ago, I preached a sermon about calling out this strong man. A couple weeks later, Jake did the same thing. A few weeks ago, Ricardo did the same thing. Now, I want to ask you if this identifies with you lately. Increased sickness, greater temptation, higher anxiety, depression, complacency and indifference, wondering what your purpose is, feeling incomplete and wondering why you're doing what you're doing. See, the Bible compares Satan to a snake. There are two types of snakes. Well, there are more than two types, but there's two types of deadly snakes. If there are more than two, then just bear with me. I don't know much about snakes, but I know there are at least two types. All right, one of them bites you, inflicts venom into you, and disables you. Makes you sick. Whatever. Now, I've heard people say, well, if their eyes look like this and their nose looks like this, if I see a snake, I don't care. I'm running. I'm not going to investigate. I'm going to assume it's bad. If it's harmless and can kill little mice, then God bless that thing. Get out of my house, or I'm going to burn it down. Don't care. Don't like snakes. But those, they inflict venom, bitterness, anger, hatred, frustration, depression. They just stick their deadly fangs in you, and these emotions come up on you, and they disable you from walking in the purpose that God has called you to walk into. But then there's another type of deadly snake, and it's called a constrictor. And what it does is it catches you unaware, and it wraps itself around you, and it chokes you until you're almost dead, and then it swallows you whole. Has anybody ever felt like something's trying to crush you? The room's closing in on you? Anxiety is trying to crush you? See, that's the enemy. He's real. But you know what else I see besides this? Is I see a church that has full authority over him. Go with me to Matthew chapter 16. See, Peter made a confession that thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God. And this was Jesus' response in verse 17. And Jesus answered him, blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah. That's Simon, son of Jonah, by the way. That's what Bar means. For flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father who is heaven. Now listen to this. And I tell you that you are Peter, and on this rock being Jesus, being who he is. So as long as we're built on Jesus, we have this promise. I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. That means the biter or the constrictor has no authority over the church, as long as they're built on him. We've got to be built on the foundation of Jesus. And the church is not one person, it is people. That's why the Bible says, wherever two or three are gathered together in my name, there I am in the midst of them. Go with me to 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 4 and 5. I've read this multiple times. It says, for the weapons of our warfare are not of the flesh, but have divine power to destroy strongholds, to destroy arguments, and every lofty opinion raised against the knowledge of God, and to take every thought captive to obey Christ. See, this is the church I see. I see a church that takes its fight to the gates of hell. Hell can't attack my house because I'm too busy whooping their tail on their territory. Because I have the authority to demolish strongholds. Actually, it says we. We have the authority to demolish strongholds, to take out fortresses that the enemy built for the purpose of shooting people and destroying their purpose with either the venom or the constriction and swallowing them whole. There are people right now living inside of constrictors and they cannot get free because they refuse to be alert to their purpose, to their destiny. And we've got to wake up. We've got to wake up. These dead bodies on the floor, some of them were bitten by bitterness and hurt feelings and frustration. And the pastor did something to me. Poisoned by the enemy. And some of them were restricted, and they're still wriggling inside of this snake that's eating them alive. They're trying to get free. And folks, there's only one thing that will get them free. They got to connect back to their supply. They got to connect back to the people God has designed them to lockstep with. This is important. I see a church that has authority. Matthew 28:18-20, it says, all authority, Jesus says, has been given unto me. Therefore, go make disciples of all nations, baptizing